have you ever stopped to think about what happens, really happens, every single second of your life? Your mind takes in this absolute flood of information, sights, sounds, feelings, and somehow it all makes sense. It feels totally automatic, right? But it's not. We're going to dive deep into an ancient Indian theory that puts this whole incredible process right under the microscope.
So let's just take a simple example. You see a flower. Easy. But think about it for a second. Light hits your eyes, a bunch of signals shoot off to your brain, but how does that raw, messy data become the clear, confident thought that's a flower? It's a process that's so fast we just take it for granted, but believe it or not, some of the most brilliant minds in history spent centuries mapping it out.
And our guides for this are the philosophers from the ancient Nyāya school in India. Now, the best way to think about these guys is as detectives of the mind. They were completely obsessed with one fundamental question. How can we be sure that what we know is actually true? And maybe more importantly, how do we avoid getting fooled by our own brains?
Now, to figure this out, they didn't just sit around and guess. They were incredibly systematic. They developed a whole set of tools for getting what they called pramana, which just means valid, correct knowledge. And these tools are called pramanas. You can think of them as their approved, certified methods for discovering what's real.
In their toolkit, they had 4 main instruments. You've got inference, you see smoke, you infer there's a fire. There's comparison, understanding something new by comparing it to something you already get. And there's testimony, basically trusting an expert or a reliable source. But the big one, the real foundation for all the others, is perception, or pratyakṣa. And that's what we're going to zero in on today.
So, what did these mental detectives decide counts as perception? What were the rules for a sight or a sound to be considered true, valid knowledge? Well, luckily for us, the school's founder, a guy named Gautama, literally wrote the rulebook. He came up with this super precise definition that became the cornerstone for their entire way of thinking.
And there it is. Okay, I know, that sounds a little dense and academic at first glance, but trust me, it's actually an incredibly smart and logical checklist. Let's break down the 3 most important rules it sets out.
First up, and this one's kind of the most obvious, your senses have to actually make contact with the thing. So to really perceive that flower, your eyes have to be interacting with the light that's bouncing off of it. You can't just be remembering a flower or hearing your friend talk about one. That's not perception, that's memory or testimony. It's got to be direct, right here, right now.
Second, your perception has to be correct. It can't be an error. The classic example they always used is this. You're walking in the dark, you see a coil of rope on the ground, and for a split second, you think it's a snake. Your heart pounds, right? Well, that experience, that seeing a snake, is not valid knowledge because it's wrong. It's an illusion. For it to count as true perception, you got to see the rope as a rope.
And third, the knowledge you get has to be definite. It can't be fuzzy. Imagine you're looking at a figure way off in the distance through some fog. You might think, is that a person or is it just a weirdly shaped tree stump? That feeling of doubt, that uncertainty, means it doesn't qualify as valid perception. Not yet, anyway. It has to be a clear, certain recognition, not just a guess.
Okay, so we've got the rules for what counts as real perception. But this is where it gets even cooler. The Nyāya thinkers went deeper. They actually broke down the process itself, and what they argued was that even the simplest act of seeing something, anything, happens in 2 distinct, lightning-fast stages.
The first stage is what they called indeterminate perception. This is a pure, raw flash of sensation. It's a momentary awareness that something is there, before your mind has put any words or labels on it at all. It's just a blip of existence. And then instantly, we hit stage 2, determinate perception. This is where your mind takes that raw data, mashes it up with your memories and all the concepts you know, and produces a complete thought. Aha, that is a red flower. It goes from a blur to a fully formed idea in less than a blink.
But they didn't just stop there with everyday perception. They started asking some really fascinating questions, like, what if our minds could perceive things that aren't physically right in front of our senses? They actually explored this idea that perception itself could be, well, extraordinary. And this led them to split their whole theory into 2 big categories. So everything we've talked about so far, seeing the flower, the rope, all that falls under ordinary perception, the standard issue way our senses work. But then they identified 3 types of what they called extraordinary perception, where knowledge seems to just arrive without that direct physical contact we talked about. The first type of this extraordinary perception is all about seeing the universal idea inside a specific thing. So when you look at a single clay pot, you're not just seeing that one pot. According to them, your mind is also perceiving the universal quality of potness, the very essence of what makes any pot a pot. And that's how, after seeing just one, you can recognize every other pot you see for the rest of your life. It's like you've perceived the entire category.
Now, this next one is really wild. It's perception through association. Think about looking at an ice cube. You don't just see that it's clear and solid, you almost instantly perceive its coldness, right? But hold on, your eyes can't feel temperature. So what's going on? Well, the Nyāya school said that your past experience of touching ice is so powerfully linked to how it looks that your sense of sight literally brings the perception of cold along for the ride.
And finally, we get to the most profound, the most out there type, yogic perception. This was described as an ability that you could only get through intense spiritual practice and discipline. It's the power to intuitively perceive everything, past, present, and future, things that are near and incredibly far away, all at the same time. This is like the final boss of perception, the absolute theoretical peak of what the human mind is capable of.
Okay, so I get it. This is a super intricate, ancient system. But why does any of this matter to us today? I mean, we've got neuroscience and psychology. What's the real takeaway here?
Well, what it gives us is a powerful mental framework to start questioning our own minds. It pushes us to ask, am I really seeing what's there? Or have my own biases and expectations already jumped in and slapped a label on it? Am I seeing the rope as a rope, or is my fear turning it into a snake? It's a tool that helps us realize we don't just passively see reality. We are actively building it every single moment.
And that leaves us with one last, pretty provocative thought to chew on. The Nyāya school didn't see perception as just some fixed biological tool we're stuck with. They believed it could be expanded. And that just makes you wonder, if our senses really do have this hidden, extraordinary potential, what else is out there, all around us, that we're simply not tuned in to perceive yet?